So, well, that I learned something from that that people have connotations with the word mercy that maybe aren't mine. But I also do understand it's important that the word, if you're going to use it in your practice, that it really connects with a sense of compassion. And there's kind of, something that's a compassion killer, I think, is the sense of it being about pity or talking down, condescension in any way is not genuine compassion. So it's important to know that that word has that capacity to call that up. And then it may be a word that puts you in the place of like appealing to someone outside of you, appealing to someone higher, appealing to someone who appears to have the power to forgive or to change the situation. So that was helpful to hear. So it occurred to me to just kind of reiterate that, compassion is this middle path between kind of holding yourself apart, or indifference as kind of the most extreme version of that, and then just identification with someone else's suffering. So you're kind of like right there in there with them. So rather it's this place where you are present with suffering, not because you're better than it, but because you're equal in a certain way around this. In using the phrase, "this is suffering," that I've encouraged you to do, or the phrase human, or it's not really a phrase, I guess it's a word, the word human, it can be an avenue to this kind of presence, like standing beside yourself or standing beside someone who's suffering. That's the essence of compassion, of supplying presence, supplying non-separation from suffering. And that's true as much of being with someone else who's suffering as it is of being with ourselves suffering. To give ourselves presence when we're suffering, to not be separate from ourselves when we're suffering, to not judge ourselves for suffering, to not feel like our suffering is a failure of some sort. To feel the vulnerability of being human and to let that soften you. I've said at times, if there's something you can do for someone else who's suffering, then by all means do it. But, wanting to rush in and fix is not necessarily the spirit of compassion. We'd certainly be compassionate to do something to relieve someone's suffering. But sometimes things can't be fixed, or the perception that there's something to fix misses the mark somehow. Rather, that this is a moment to let being human touch you, to let suffering, the reality of suffering, touch you and take you deeper. And sometimes the urge to fix is the refusal of that. Sometimes it's, if you've ever turned to someone to tell them about something you're suffering with, and they immediately want to jump in and tell you what you can do about it. And once in a while, that's helpful. If you're feeling really lost about what to do and you're kind of asking for what to do. But I've also had the experience sometimes of someone jumping in and telling you what to do, and it feels a little like they're not taking it in. They're not feeling what it's like to be in my place. And they don't necessarily understand my place either, what it's like to be me, we all sometimes want to offer solutions to show that we're not helpless. But it's maybe the case that the person we're listening to does feel helpless in some way. Maybe they aren't finding whatever that is inside of themselves to be able to surmount the situation that they're in. So it can be very helpful to offer presence, to offer a presence which is not condescending in any way. I'm trying to think in terms of just kind of finishing this class. This is our last class for the series. Anything else that I might want to say? I feel in a way like I've said most of it already. And I've given you some of I feel like my most powerful tools. Open your heart to it is another one. I don't know that we gave it quite its full due, but I find it to be really a helpful phrase for myself. I can find myself sometimes in a state of aversion towards things that I see going on around me. Unskillful action, as we say in Buddhism. I love that phrase, unskillful action. And to just recognize unskillful action is not in itself aversion, it's discernment. But then to go to the about it is the aversion. And so sometimes that phrase, open your heart to it, can kind of stop me and allow me to do a little bit of a shift inside, where it's like, okay, unskillful action, I've been there, I'm still there. There's something, when I say open your heart to it, something softens. Something softens. And I see how sometimes confusing this world is for human beings. How we're going through it and we're negotiating so many different levels of ourselves. There's so many parts of ourselves, so many levels. Some of them more mature than others, And sometimes our more immature parts jump in and take control and lead us around by the nose. And it can be difficult. And then that happens, and then another part that thinks it's mature, but actually isn't all that mature, called judgment, jumps in and kind of wags the finger at us for whatever that was that jumped in and took over. So it takes over instead. Makes us feel kind of ashamed or low in some way. So open your heart to it. I don't know what's ahead for you in the next few weeks. These are the holidays. We're in the midst of the holidays. Hanukkah has started. Christmas is coming. Kwanzaa's somewhere in there. The solstice. Or whatever else you might celebrate. I know, that this season is not easy on a variety of levels. I think we're going to have a pretty joyous situation with my family there, but it's not easy to organize all this and to cook for everybody and have a lot of people in the house. But I know also for other people, there's often a lot of conflict in the family. There's a lot of ways that people rub each other the wrong way. And there may be someone that you're alienated from in your family who isn't coming, who you'll nonetheless be thinking of. And there may be some pain there, maybe some suffering, or you may be alone and not want to be. Some people actually like it. Other people don't. Other people, it's a sign that there's something wrong with them, maybe, or just that they're lonely, just that they don't have someone, or don't have family near. Whatever it is, there's, as is always the case, there's all sorts of potential for suffering. There's all sorts of potential. So if I have a recommendation for this coming season, it would be open your heart to it. Just see what it is to be human. And step back from judgment. Step back from thinking that something's wrong and you have to fix it. And allow the feelings that are there, but accompany them, which is a little different than just sinking into them. Actually accompany yourself in any difficult feelings. It's a different skill. Actually, I'm not sure sinking in them is any skill at all. It happens quite naturally to all of us. We're feeling badly. But to show up, you're feeling badly, and then to show up with yourself, is a much needed skill. So that being said, I wish you a lot of joy. And if any of you are on the fence about doing the winter retreat, please consider it. It's January 9th through 11th, and it's a wonderful experience. It's mostly silent and meditation, intensive meditation and silence. We do some movement, and there's a walking meditation, there's a talk, there's some dialogue, and so it's not all silent. And people share from their heart, and I find it to be just a wonderful gathering. So consider it if you haven't signed up already. So the way I thought we would end tonight, and I think maybe I'll switch again to yet another track of recording in case you want to access this again, is I'd like to do a little guided meditation just on compassion for ourselves and the world to end this class.